FBI agents are some of the most powerful authorities, even more powerful than cops. But what happens when FBI agents mess up and cops try to arrest them? This guy was approached on the street by a team of cops who claimed he looked like a criminal. They'd been searching for a little to police. Now, he was actually an undercover FBI agent about to do the unthinkable.
Oh, what does that say? No, get the fuck off me, dude! Get off me, dude!
The cops confirmed that they've pulled over this man because he looks like a man that they have a warrant out for. Remember that the law requires cops to have reasonable suspicion that somebody has committed a crime before making an arrest, meaning they were way beyond their rights. The cops continued to give an incredibly loose reason for detaining him and also state that if they are wrong, they are wrong. Terrifying statements. That's both unprofessional and dangerous. If an officer feels comfortable using that logic here, it's likely they'd also feel comfortable using it in a higher stakes situation, possibly endangering the public. All of a sudden, this man procures an official FBI ID card, proving both that he's not the man they're looking for and that these cops are now in big trouble. Check out how this cop goes from consistently making direct eye contact with the suspect.
Fucked up.
What does that say? Oh!
Wrong guy!
Oh!
Wrong guy!
To refusing to meet his eyes at any point after seeing the ID. The entire event was incredibly unprofessional and poorly handled by the fault of the officers. But at least the cops were respectful of this agent after finding out his true identity. The same cannot be said for the cops in the next case who showed exactly what not to do when dealing with an FBI agent undercover. This agent was actually investigating police corruption in the Franklin County Police Department, but he had no idea just how corrupt this officer would turn out to be.
Cut off the recording. Okay, I will when I leave the area, sir. Hey, TJ, this guy is telling me to turn my body camera off and telling me he's going to contact other people to get involved with this. Let me get his tag number real quick. It's going to be LKST57. 33 Franklin, 1065, Florida 28.
The agent had called this officer to meet at a random location and refused to meet him at their offices. If it's not already obvious, everything this agent does and says, from now on, is a test to try and see how well this cop follows conduct, and if his coworkers follow suits. This is why he asked him to turn off his body cam. And luckily for the cop, he passed this first test with flying colors. However, it doesn't seem as though this is going to last for very long. Things are understandably not adding up for the officer, so he decides to detain the agent and waits for backup to arrive. When backup arrives, the officer explains the full situation to them, saying that the suspect is armed, uncooperative, and above all incredibly suspicious. Receiving a call on your personal phone number from an FBI agent would definitely ring alarm bells as a cop, but it's important that they continue to be professional and follow the rules. The officers proceeded to handcuff the agent and place him in the back of their patrol car, where he starts to complain that the heat is way too high in the vehicle and that he desperately needs air. But all of a sudden they receive a call from HQ that should put this entire event to rest. Even after this, though, the officer still decides to keep the agent inside their patrol vehicle, despite being explicitly told that he actually is an FBI agent. Instead of letting him out as instructed, the officer continues to talk about the situation while he begs to be let go. But after an extra 3 minutes of completely unnecessary conversation, the agent is finally let out of the vehicle, but it seems he's not feeling too good. After a further 10 minutes, medics arrived and the agent is taken away in an ambulance. Thankfully, despite what can only be described as disrespect and neglect from the officers, the agent suffered no serious injuries. But things ended differently for ATF agent Burke, who was treated so badly by police that he had to file a lawsuit against them.
Face down now! Face down! You are the one making a mistake! Settle down! Face down now! All the way down! All the way!
Agent Burke was dispatched to a house to confiscate a firearm that had been illegally acquired by the residents. However, instead of being granted access to the home, the door was instead shut in his face and the residents called the police. The cops were given Agent Burke's badge number, but still treated the incident as a break-in and Burke as a criminal agent. Burke refuses immediate orders to get on the ground, likely so police can check if he's armed or not, and continues the investigation safely. Burke believes that because he's a federal agent, He's subject to the orders of municipal police. But if that was the case, any criminal could falsely claim there were a federal agent to bypass police orders. While he may not think he looks like a threat himself, it remains that he should have politely followed the orders. So the cops could figure out the situation easily, but instead things continue to escalate greatly once a second officer arrives. Burke finally follows the orders and lays down on the ground while the cops detain him. Burke allows them to cuff him, making it clear that his federal ID is in his back pocket, and informs him that he has a medical condition that restricts his breathing. Instead of taking note of any of these points, officers restrict Burke until he can barely move and stun him with a taser, despite him already being on the ground and restrained. In the distressing footage, Burke continues to tell the officers that he's an ATF agent out on a call and to simply take his ID from his back pocket. After finally looking at his ID, officers keep him under arrest and take him to their patrol vehicle. The cops then force Burke to the vehicle, talking over his pleas and explanations regarding his medical condition. Police continue to detain Burke in their patrol vehicle for over an hour longer before eventually releasing him without charges. Despite not necessarily showing perfect conduct himself, Burke decided to sue the Columbus Police Department, citing excessive force and unlawful arrest. The original complaint says that after the incident, which caused him both physical and mental harm, he was taken from active duty and confined solely to administrative and support roles. It's with adjustments having to be made to the department to accommodate him. As of this video's upload, the case is still ongoing. Realistically, both parties involved. In this case, we're in the wrong to some extent, but in the case of Mac Proctor, things are totally different. Mac is supposedly an undercover agent with a very strong knowledge of the law, and he's about to show exactly how corrupt police officers can be completely unprovoked. Mac was parked in a private parking lot, waiting for a takeout order while on his shift as a delivery driver. All his vehicle wasn't in a designated parking spot, it wasn't blocking the flow of traffic, and he only left it there unattended while picking up his food upon returning to his vehicle. Mac was approached by a police officer stating he was violating parking rules. Of course, Mac has every right to stay silent in the face of the officer's questions, especially ones that don't all pertain to criminal proceedings. At no point did he raise his tone or say anything out of line, yet the officer asks why he's being so angry. Many people think that some police officers, sirs, are used to consistently being in command and control on these interactions, and it's possible the same is true with this officer when Mac exercised his rights and just asked for things to be moved along. This cop was surprised and took it as a combative statement. The officer also states that he can stand there all day, presumably until the questions are answered. This is not the case. Police are not permitted to extend the length of a traffic stop for an unreasonable cause. If Mac was breaking a law by parking there, the officer should have just been able to write him a ticket, and with his day, there is no reason to extend this interaction simply because Mac isn't answering questions. The officer informs Mac that he is being detained for parking here to issue a citation for parking violation. You must be breaking either local, state, or federal law, something like parking in a handicap spot without proper documentation. If you are merely breaking the rules set by the owner of a private lot, the police have no jurisdiction to hit you with a parking violation. As you are not breaking any laws enforced by them, Mac was allowed to leave without further incident. But this interaction raises questions about why he was met with further difficulties after doing nothing other than exercising his Fifth Amendment right. In fact, it's strange that the entire interaction even happened in the first place. If the officer had observed Mac's vehicle obstructing traffic, the incident could have been avoided by simply asking him to move his vehicle out of the way and let him go about his day from there. Instead, the officer detained Mac, preventing him from moving his vehicle and keeping it the very place that's allegedly impeding traffic flow. The cop later found out that Mac wasn't even a federal agent or officer himself, and simply managed to prove just how valuable it is to know the law.